So are you rolling your intro or is your intro over, Shane?
Be quick because I'm already late. We can just move it right in once we're ready
Excellent.
here.
All right.
Yeah,
Well, if
give
you're
me six
tuning in,
seconds.
okay, well we're gonna give Space
Oh,
Audits 6 seconds to catch up here. But if you are tuning in to Ether Cosmology, please bear with us for just a moment. Thank you for your patience.
all right. Intro complete.
Excellent. So everyone, thank you for being here on Ether Cosmology, Space Audits, ADL. Shane is going to take it away here with his presentation on the grand celestial cycle. Go ahead, Shane.
Nice, thanks, Toby. So this is a long labor. I think every time I tried to do more work on it, I ended up branching out and figuring out.
Hello?
Oh, I think we lost his audio again. Shane?
Did there?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's back now.
Uh, my thing is just lit up now forever.
Pardon us. Please bear with us for a moment. We're having some audio issues here today. Technical issues. What kind of show doesn't have the occasional technical issue?
This mic thing is killing me. It short circuits in the USB, and then God knows what. All right, so let's just play it. Everyone good? Can you hear?
Yeah.
Yes,
All right.
sir.
Right. So to start the Eclipse presentation, started as a whim and a troll for people on Twitter who I was arguing with, right? That all eclipses are post-dictions and nobody can predict them. And they told me very adamantly that no, only heliocentric proponents can predict them, which is why we started this whole thing. But essentially, as soon as I got into the work, I realized it was, first of all, a lot more work than I'd intended, right? But second, that it was pivotal, crucial, and something that we have to do. So we're gonna start this whole project with the eclipse cycles and the whole metonic cycle and the passage of time, and we're gonna take it to a pretty ridiculous level at the end. So hang in there, it's gonna be fun. All right, so we're gonna try a little bit of a different format this time. Got some new things to try out, hopefully some streamlining, some process. Still trying to really get my flow in doing these presentations, but let's try with this. So we're going to take a look at some of the complicated series of sorrow cycles, and then we're going to break each one down into the greater celestial cycle, and we're going to see the components in their simplest forms. Right, this knowledge has been long known, but recently forgotten, and then since occulted, and then weaponized against us. So my intent, right, is that everyone who watches this will understand how to predict eclipses. I think it's pivotal that we understand the cyclical nature of the sky, because it's going to come to pass that everything that we know can't be trusted or that we should be double checked. And the only way to double check anything like that is to independently corroborate it with the sky, as it was given to us for just that purpose, I think. So before we can understand the macro, right, we have to understand the micro. The lunar cycle, or the Soros, is the smallest part of the larger collection of cycles within cycles that, by their appearance in the heavens, mark the periods of time for all to know and to see. The sky functions as a perfect clock, except most of the world has forgotten how to read it. But the concept of time is one of those most thoroughly messed with concepts throughout all of history. I think things like intercalary days and leap years, time zones, 12 versus 24-hour clocks, metric system, standardization, all those daylight savings time, it's become impossible to keep up with the exact procession of days, hours, and minutes as it were. So we've grown naturally dependent on technology, like watches, clocks, to tell us the time, and of course the important events associated with that time. But there has been along with the natural progression towards this, right? There's been a decidedly unnatural push via, let's say, the controllers of the world to remove the natural ability to tell time, to push it towards clocks and iPhones and iWatches and all that stuff. We're not going to go into the details here. This isn't the point of this particular presentation, but it very much will be the subject of the next one, right? So the solution to that is to learn how to read the sky clock in the sky. Right, so because it's been so difficult for people to keep up with the changes in the ways that we keep time, we've acclimated to not being able to tell time or discern it for ourselves by looking into the heavens. And this, my friends, is what has made us so susceptible to the deceptions of the modern age. Since we're so dependent on the other men to tell us what time it is, we have also allowed them to tell us how long it has been, and thus, most importantly, how long there has ever been. It just means that, like, same way that when the victor of a war writes the history of the war, results may be skewed, right? Or if the police department chooses to investigate themselves and frequently finds no wrongdoing, etc. Right? If all of human history, right, has been filtered through this process of depending on man to tell us when, who, when, where, and why, and how, then we have a little bit of a problem, according to my understanding, right? If we want to take everything at its word, and we want to really know the history of the world and exactly how and why we got here, then all of our current collective knowledge has been essentially filtered through a framework that could be tainted. And all the events of the past, right down to those in the Bible, they're all stored and relayed to us with chronological markers, which are intended for us to be able to use them to track backwards through time from our current position. That's what they're for. However, if you've ever tried to do that to any of the stories of the ancient antiquity age, it's much harder than you think. It seems like it was built for that, but there are many things that go wrong almost immediately. So you only have so many small amendments to changes of the time and the flow and how we record it and which king said what and which season we're in now and how they've decided to accommodate, intercalary and leap years and things. So it's really hard to keep track of time over time and the changes to the keeping of time, right? So we don't have just those small things to keep contend with, but we have giant, sweeping, massive changes through our history that are almost make it impossible. Each one of these make it impossible to track time, like switching from a solar form of timekeeping to a lunar one, or redating all past events in line with this new dating system. Anyway, the point is, if you aim to lie about a history of a people, better also lie about the timeline of that people, so you have to be able to insert convincing and corroborative events. Hence, if you make up a lie, you need a good Greek. You gotta insert a good fake Greek to sell that lie. Inside joke there. Anyway, so to be able to lie to a people, you need to be able to lie to them about time and change time whenever you need, right? So you need to have control over their perception of time. So it would be impossible, I think, to lie to a people about the people's history without also lying about time. And that's why I put such importance on the understanding and reclamation of the celestial clock.
Is this live?
So this presentation is really only about the celestial cycle. I'll try to remain focused on that and be concise as we go through an absurd amount of information everything related to the solar cycle, but there are many components required for a full understanding. The problem with this project, the more I try to do it, the more stuff I find, the more interesting thing, the more side projects I've accustomed to, like the more database tabs I just happen to create, and I'm like, oh, I haven't done the main mission yet, right? I keep getting bogged down because there's just interconnected things that pop up all over the place, which we will definitely get to, right? So we're going to touch briefly on the things that we're going to speed by, which each one requires its own course for a full understanding, right? But I'm gonna do as much as I can to keep it concise and enough to make sure that everyone who watches has an entire understanding and making sure that they can appreciate the conclusion. All right. I know it was a really long-winded intro and definitely not my usual style, so thanks for hanging in there. And here we go, man. Right. And I gotta figure out, if this eclipse thing is heliocentric in nature, or if like we all thought the geocentrists of old were able to do it without any problem. The anti-flat earthers of today, like McToon and all the people who just repeat what he says, say that eclipses actually can't be predicted by people who don't know the Earth is a sphere because of reasons. And let's see what this expert and professor says. So I'm trying to figure out, is this the right guy to ask?
I'm Steve Bleiler,
Steve.
Professor of Mathematics and Statistics at Portland State University.
Oh, hey, Steve. I'm Shane. I'm some dude trying to figure out eclipses on the internet. I have this theory that we need to know Newtonian gravitational mechanics and gravitational forces and solar and lunar ephemerises with all the specific data. Do I need all that to predict eclipses?
Sort of mathematics that you learned in grade school and an understanding of what we in music would call harmony.
So you're saying I don't need all the things that I mentioned? Let's see. I don't need gravity. I don't need the three-body problem to be solved, so I can use gravitational forces to predict the path of a moving body in orbit? Or any of those things? You're saying I only need to know frequency or harmonics? Or what? What do you mean, Steve?
When is it that various tones, frequencies, line up with each other?
So how do people figure that out? Where do you start? You have to have a special laser
Yeah, where
from
do
the
you start?
moon and all that sort of thing?
No, you can start in your backyard with a conveniently placed a pole, maybe a tetherball pole or maybe a light pole across the street, and a good timepiece so that you know when things are happening.
Well, all right, I got that. I got a basic understanding of frequencies and pattern recognition, and I can certainly sit outside my house and look at the sky for a little bit. What do you think I should do to start tracking eclipses, Steve?
And if you have the same place to sit every night, you can pick a celestial object like the sun or the moon or a bright star or one of the planets, and you just time when it goes by that pole. The other thing, if you have some way to measure angles, protractor or even just two pieces of wood with a single nail stuck between it, so that you can measure the angle between the horizon and the object you're looking at when it goes through past your pole. That's all you need to do enough measurements for you to be able to see an eclipse coming.
Right, so you said some numbers. You're gonna need some what? Really big, hard to calculate, really heliocentric specific, and they're exclusive numbers, right? Nothing like basic geocentric numbers. Right, Steve?
Basically, you get that knowledge by just sitting in your backyard and looking at the heavens. It's totally free.
No
And
way.
again, all you need is a vertical stick, a reasonable timepiece. That can be the two bright stars in the bucket of the Big Dipper, which actually form a giant clock. The other thing, if you have some way to measure angles,
I do, yeah.
protractor or even just two pieces of wood with a single nail stuck between it, so that you can measure the angle between the horizon and the object you're looking at when it goes through past your pole. That's all you need to do enough measurements for you to be able to see an eclipse coming.
Wait, so you're saying anyone can do it? I don't need the occulted high priest to give me the okay to be able to use my brain to look at the sky and notice a pattern? Are you sure, Steve? Because the people on Twitter are particularly loquacious about how, stupid flat earthers can't possibly do this. They're not really vocal on the particular reasons, mind you, but they do say it a lot. So I was starting to think that it might be true. What do you think?
Since everything is moving, we like to think of like a strobe light that freezes the motion, that just shows us where everything is. And then we can ask ourselves, is one of these alignments coming up? And how soon might it be? Did one of them happen in the past? How long ago? Will one happen in the future? How much? And for that, we just need to know a few numbers and then sort of plug them into our knowledge of harmony.
Just sticking with the basics some more, like I said, let's bounce from the equation of time and the eccentricity of the sun as a direct impact of the dance between the sun and the moon over the period of the ecliptic and the great astronomical year. It reminded me a great deal of the tides because they have a dynamic semi-diurnal oscillating tide, which again is directly based on the relationship of the sun and the moon's orbit and the intersections. They have these crazy tides that literally have to do a double diurnal oscillation with a wag front with a hula hooping thing. Anyway, the eccentricity between those two causes a lot of similar things. In this way, they use harmonic frequencies to predict tides. Again, very, very strange and cool. Here's a couple little looks at that, harmonic constituents, etc., and how they get tides to work. I wanted to go through what is an actual eclipse, right? Let's just go through the basics, because bound to get asked for a flat Earth is what is an eclipse, right? So many people won't hear a single word without past the shape of the shadow. Let's first discuss what's really happening here on our flat plane during an eclipse, right? So solar eclipse is when the sun passes behind the moon.
Yo, we lost audio, big dog.
Oh, I'm muted. Yeah. I can't change the size. Can you guys even hear me? Do I have a mic still?
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right, that's good. So, yeah, so this part obviously didn't record sound. My mic crapped out. It was just going through the database, the basic stuff for eclipses like solar, lunar. What we just said for geocentric is like the sun or the moon passes in front of and behind the sun. That's the only difference for us. We don't have obviously an Earth shape to cast a shadow through the other horizon, etc. And that's basically what I'm going over here. But man, I can't click on anything or change anything. This is absurd. Oh, and I'm on camera. All right. Oh, I'm back? Not really, though.
Yeah, it's super muffled.
Let me turn this off. So annular, right? Annular occurs when the moon passes directly between the sun and it's too far away, and it has this outer disk that is a silhouette of the moon, essentially. We're on lunar. No, it's on solar. Let's just do lunar. For them, it's when the Earth casts quote a shadow on the moon, but it can do so from across the horizon. For us, it's because they're both luminaries. The moon is actually a lesser light, and then when the moon approaches the sun, it passes through the connection behind it, and that sort of projection creates the effect that we know as an eclipse. It also gives it that red hue, surprisingly enough. And when we actually, I think I have a video that'll go over it for about a minute, but it's a really good explanation of why that would happen and how it would happen. Also, side note, there's a whole section on Enoch. I think it's chapter 78 that literally goes over the luminaries, the eclipse cycle, how it works, and even names 651 as the great astronomical year. So that was awesome to find out. And I think he's going to go through this, but a solar eclipse is the only other one. It's it's the main typical one when the moon passes by the sun. The sun supposedly takes a bite out of it, right, to symbolize the Ouroboros from way back when. It's the sun eating the moon as it passes. But it's every new moon is a mini eclipse. But when they are lined up with the node only is when it will form an eclipse. So for a lunar eclipse to happen, it has to be a lunar phase, and it has to coincide with the node. Does this guy have music? Yeah, all right. So he's the explanation for why the lunar doesn't make sense for them.
Actually a great light, and the moon is a lesser light. And during a solar eclipse, the moon is during its new moon phase. It is devoid of light. The moon is empty. It is empty. That's why this empty portion is coinciding with the sun, and when that happens, you can see directly through the great light. You can see directly through the sun. None of these things are three-dimensional above us. They're all inside the firmament. Boom. Read the Book of Enoch for further explanation. During a new moon, moon devoid of light, it is empty. The emptiness is inside the sun. The sun is passing through the moon during a solar eclipse. There was a solar eclipse during the crucifixion of Christ.
So Samuel Robotham mentioned the book called The Terrestrial Plane, and we went into it to see what he was talking about with the 50 recorded instances where the sun and the moon were both visible and supposedly have an eclipse. Of course, this would be the Selenilian eclipse. And it shows that the illustration in his book, how impossible that would be for the thing that you can see to be causing the eclipse. Of course, the Astronomical Society and mainstream say that it's heavy refraction, as he says here, is according with the accurate almanac time, then actually it is refraction. Astronomers say so. But we're just going to take a look at a couple of the instances of this to see exactly when they would occur. And according on the book, here are some of the listed dates of occurrence. And here's another sort of truncated list that I put together. There's a couple of them. And then here's one we're going to be looking at on the website, because they have a wonderful way to go over it right here. All right, they have these wonderful pictures and they say, hey, based on this, a lunar observation from way back, is it possible? Totally possible. Don't worry about it. Refraction lifts them a bit higher, even though they're completely visible. So this is 1989, August 16th, right? So that's the one we were just talking about. And it's in Hawaii. And it says, actually, here's the sun, right? Here's the eclipse. Where's the moon? On the other side, all the way over there. What? On the complete other side of the horizon. What the hell is going on there, guys? Well, definitely refraction.
Samuel Robotham, in his book, wrote the simplest method of predicting a future eclipse is to take tables that have been formed over hundreds of years of careful observation, and any observer can make their own tables. If you collect the calendars of the last 40 years, the time of the eclipses, and each year, they can be organized into a table. After examining the table, the observer will soon realize that there are cycles of eclipses that are repeated. When reaching eclipse number 19 or 20, they will see that it's a repetition of the first eclipses on the table, so following this method will be very easy to predict similar future eclipses. A lunar eclipse is formed when the Earth is between the Sun and the Moon, is what they tell us. The Earth then casts a shadow on the Moon, thus causing the eclipse. But this explanation has already been refuted by Frederick Henry Cook. In his book, The Terrestrial Plane, he writes, according to the new theory, the false one, a lunar eclipse occurs when the Sun and Earth and Moon are in a straight line. But it's documented that since the 15th century, more than 50 eclipses have occurred while both the Sun and Moon were still visible above the horizon. In other words, the Sun and the Moon were visible at the same time in the sky while the Moon was eclipsed. And this is the kind of thing that just gave me goosebumps. While the Moon was eclipsed, for example, on July 19th of 1750, in Paris, observers saw an eclipsed moon while the sun was clearly seen in the sky above the horizon. The same thing happened in the eclipses of April 20th in 1837. September 20th of 1700, June 16th of 1666, November 3rd of 1648, and July 17th of 1590. Also, a recent documented event occurred August 16th of 1989 in Hawaii, where the partially eclipsed moon could be seen rising while the sun was still setting. That means the sun, the earth, and the moon were not aligned while the lunar eclipse occurred. So it's impossible that the eclipse was caused by the earth's shadow being projected onto the moon. Another thing they say is that the solar eclipse occurs when the moon stands between the earth and the sun, the moon covering the exact circumference of the sun. This already improbable scenario is refuted by recordings where it can be seen that it's not the moon covering the sun.
One of them.
Shadow on the moon, or supposed shadow on the moon, changes directions almost 90 degrees. Look at this. Comes from the top down. Oh, look, oh, the Earth's just making a right angle turn. Oh, and then comes off the other way. Now, how does that make sense? How does the Earth, what, is the Earth doing a right angle turn mid-eclipse? So this is actual proof that lunar eclipses actually debunk the globe, because the Earth shouldn't be making a right angle turn So something else is causing the eclipse. We don't know what it is, but an intellectually honest person would just say, well, I don't know. And I'm telling you, I don't know what the cause of the lunar eclipse is, but it's definitely not Earth's shadow.
All right, enough preamble. I think it's finally time to start getting to the gravy, right? So, I mean, I'm going to start with the basics, right? The sun and the moon, the two luminaries, the greater light and the lesser light, right? Now, we just want to take a quick look till we make sure we know the geocentric position here, right? The sun and the moon over the Earth, and they have a pretty much a circular path, right? So it looks a lot like, can't do this. Oh, this is my database. Let's bring up monitor. There we go. So yeah, this is the sun's path, right? This is our buddy Dave on Telegram did this for us. So if you look at the AE projection, again, we know all about maps. Please save it. Nobody cares. So we put the path of the moon, right? This would be essentially where it goes from tropic to tropic, right? See how it starts in this one and goes over here, and then there should be the sun's counterpart. Oh, so this is the moon on the Mercator. Again, the tropic line's right over here. And here's how it would pass, right? So it looks like a sine wave up and down when you do it like this. And the sun's path on the Mercator. So these are equal, by the way, but what we want to do is look at where the paths would intercede, and that's what we're going to be focusing on. So actually, this and get rid of the right, cool. So essentially, right, I just want to make sure we know what we're talking about when the sun and the moon intercede, when they meet, what a nodal point is, and essentially what we're talking about, right? So we're going to overlay this. We're going to take a quick look. We're going to start with the sun and the moon. We're going to start by observing when and where they meet. See what we can do with that. So right here, this path is almost identical, right? You can see it, but it is different. And of course, another way to take a look at the path of those luminaries is Shane's model. Let's pop over here and grab that. Try to use this to show the path. Right, so here, let's turn off. Actually, let's leave it just like this. Exactly, this is exactly what I mean, right? So we have this model uses the path of the sun and the moon as an actual path, right? So they're orbiting up there, and I think we can see it. Let's see if we can't turn it off. Let's see. Dome rays, sphere rays, don't need that. We want the sun track, the moon track, and no sphere, and there we go. So, yes. All right, so here's what I'm talking about. This would be the sun's path. This would be the moon's path. All right, so as they intercede, oh, this is perfect. So it brings the path with them. It pretty much makes the path a static shape, then encircles it with it as it goes around, which for our purposes is exactly what we wanted, actually. Because we're knowing that, see how this tilt is at a different tilt than this tilt. So we're in 3D space and we have two moving bodies. So when we're looking from right here, from up top, and we're like, hey, how come they don't intersect more often? They should be intersecting all the time, right? It's because of this inclination in 3D space, right? So if we just line it up like that, then we can see that they're actually at different inclinations, right? And that those nodes go with them. Actually, let's use this model to show us what eclipses would look like. Actually, this is a pretty good idea. I think my model can handle this. Just a moment. Let's see if we can't get Shane's model up in center full screen here and do some manipulation. I think we got it. All right, so again, just going to be looking at the path of the luminary. So we have the sun right here and the moon. This is the sun track and this is the moon track. So here's how it would look, right? And then you can model some time. So it kind of spins and you see how it's whipping around that ecliptic. Like that is the best demonstration of what the ecliptic actually is that I've ever seen. Of course, the heliocentrist says, well, the whole world's tilted at that angle, 23.4 degrees. Nope, it's the inclination of the sun, and the moon is at 5 degrees. So they're both inclined separately. See how it's a little bit different? And that's what makes the intercedence of these two luminaries so difficult. And actually, this model does also kind of a good job at describing what lunar nodes are. Each time one of these each time the sun intersects with the moon, it intersects at one of these points. It is a node, okay? And that a node kind of rotates the other way with it, essentially. But it doesn't. It's not a physical node. It's not a real thing. It's a hypothetical crossing of the paths that they denote, and that's where eclipses happen. Like the only places eclipses happen. Matter of fact, let's go through a short little video I put together earlier, just describing lunar nodes, which, lo and behold, are actually referred to as Rahu and Ketu from the old Hindu lore. That would be the places where the moons are. Mythologically, it's like the Ouroboros, where the sun eats the moon, right? Because the moon passes by the sun and the sun sort of gobbles it up. But that's all mythology. Let's take a look at
Ancient Hindu scriptures tell us that once Lord Vishnu became angry with the demon Rahu for stealing the celestial liquor and beheaded him with his Sudarshan chakra. Thereafter his head started to move across the sky and eventually ended up eating the sun and the moon, causing their eclipse. The story was told to the people in ancient India, as they were not interested in the scientific or the real meaning of Rahu and Ketu. They are nothing but two imaginary astronomical points called the ascending and descending lunar nodes respectively. To understand the nodes, let us first understand the ecliptic plane. It is the plane containing the orbit of the Earth around the Sun, or in a geocentric perspective, ecliptic plane is the plane containing the orbit of the Sun around the Earth, though both of them means the same thing, just differing in the frame of reference. The Moon also revolves around the Earth in 27.3 days, so it must also have a plane containing its own orbit around the Earth. Now these two planes are not the same. The plane of the orbit of Moon is tilted by an angle of 5.14 degrees from the ecliptic plane. These 2 points are the lunar nodes. One is called the ascending node, as after crossing it, the moon goes above the ecliptic. This ascending node is called Rahu. The point lying 180 degrees opposite to the ascending node is called the descending node, as the moon goes below the ecliptic after crossing this point in its orbit. This point is called Ketu in Indian astronomy. The line joining Rahu and Ketu, or the ascending and descending node, is called the line of nodes. Now, astrodynamics has proven that this line of nodes is not stationary. Due to precession of the lunar orbit, the line of nodes also revolves around the Earth and completes one revolution in every 18.5999 or 18.6 years. In other words, the lunar nodes keep sweeping along the orbit of Moon and completes one revolution around Earth in 18.6 years. Now we come to the relation of Rahu and Ketu at the lunar nodes. Now for eclipses to occur, two conditions have to be satisfied simultaneously. One, the Earth, Moon and Sun have to be in a straight line. And number two is that Moon must be at one of the nodes. This means that the Moon must be present at one of the nodes at the time of full moon or new moon for eclipses to occur. This explains why we don't experience eclipse at every new moon or full moon.
Yeah, this is a really good demonstration. Dude, props to Walter. The best eclipse demonstration out there. That's a joke, I guess.
We lose you, Shane?
Yeah, he definitely crashed.
Uh-oh.
Unfortunate.
Well, thank you everyone for bearing with us again. Hopefully Shane will be back in just a moment here. Pardon me. Let's see here.
Keep the hope, fam.
Yo, you back, Shane?
Oh, it muted me? That's cool. I was talking.
Yo, yeah, we haven't heard you for the last few minutes. And the stream has totally crashed.
Yeah, my shit is totally fucked, man. I had to kill my stream early on because it mixed half of one program with the other, which was interesting. And then I couldn't resize, click on, or mouse wheel, which was mildly inconvenient, quickly becoming debilitating.
Okay.
But I didn't know that you guys couldn't see it. I was like, well, at least they're still watching it.
No, yeah, it's just spinning for the
Well,
stream.
then I probably got to reset everything then.
Okay. You want to do that now?
Yeah. See, now that I remember I bought that new laptop, I'm kind of excited. So I can do that. Yeah, I'll be right back then. I think I picked up my stream from the other one, but I don't know what it's doing. So hold on. Oh, frozen. It's been frozen. That makes sense. I'll be back.
Okay. All right, so Shane will be right back, and we are just going to hang tight in the meantime. I guess if anyone has any thoughts or questions or anything, or we can, I kind of open the floor, I guess. Doesn't have to be about eclipses.
Yeah, actually, I did have a question. I really like Shane's model. I've been still trying to figure it out myself, but I heard there might be an opportunity for Walter Bislin to come out, the guy who made the model, to come on and represent himself. Has he contacted you guys?
Yeah, him and Shane have gone back and forth a bit. Um, that would be a really interesting conversation.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I can't wait till he comes on.
Yeah, I believe he has essentially said no every time Shane has tried to
Oh, that's
broach.
unfortunate. I think your whole audience and the whole world would really love to see what he has to say.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be a really interesting conversation, to say the least.
Awesome. Well, thanks.
So eclipses are always during the cycle from the new moon and only during nodes, right? How do you tell what nodes are?
I think the nodes are just kind of where they happen to line up. It's just the spot where because of the math of where or the cycle of where they line up, you know that they're going to meet at that point at a certain,
Your nodes would be where your rotation of your ecliptical rotation of the sun and the moon cross.
Yep.
So when the model
Okay,
was
so it's
showing,
for the
so it looked really good when he had the model going and you could see the two circle rings offset when you looked at it horizontally across, and you could see how they angularly crossed each other at two places. And then you could look down from above or to the side and you could see how it had that angular. So it's the sun has an angle to its ecliptical ring as it does around in the sky. Not only does it go from the Tropic of Cancer to the Tropic of Capricorn, it also goes up and down, and not just that in and out ring. So the moon does the same, and where their two rings cross are the nodes. There is one node that's an ascension node and one that is a descension node. So as it's going up, they cross at one point, and as it goes down, they cross at one point. If that makes sense.
I
It's
mean,
easier when you're
if they're crossing paths, one of them has to be going up and the other one down, right? Is there?
correct.
Is it the sun that is the sun's path what makes it a ascending or descending node, or the moon's path?
Sounded
So
like
I am not
the moon. That's what it sounded
yes.
like in the
The moon.
presentation.
Okay, so if the moon is descending at the node, then it's a descending node, and if the moon is ascending, and then it's an
So
ascending node, right?
in astrology, the north node is marked as the ascension node, and the south node is marked as the descension node. And I am not positive on which direction the sun and the moon are going. Um, I know the reference to them as ascension and descension modes because of my knowledge through astrology.
Yep.
So I understand that concept of them. I cannot verify with you the direction that they are going, but through astrology, the north node is always the ascension node, your south, and that is the dragon's head. And then the south node is the dragon's tail. So in astrology, they're marked similar to the sign for Leo. It's like the head of the dragon, and then it's flipped upside down for the south node. It's the tail of the dragon.
Yep, exactly. It's a lot of it taken from astrology.
Yeah. So I know that, like, the ecliptic tilt of the past and stuff, as far as which one's going up and down, I do not know because it's hard for me to visualize as far as the model goes, but I understand how they have always been described through my years of astrology knowledge. So I just want to clarify, I don't know which way they're going. I just know what those nodes are called as how I have learned them through my passive
Opposite the stars,
knowledge.
right?
Yeah.
Aren't they going opposite? Yeah. That's a good way to put it. I mean, how much of that did we see, or was it just intermittent? Did we miss it all, or do you want to just
So
We
go through
missed
the day?
most of it.
Did
Yeah,
you?
we missed a lot.
Holy
So
shit!
you could
Really?
go, yeah,
Yeah.
go back to your video when you are looking at the model from the horizontal view, and it's got the two ecliptical rings showing of the moon and the sun. So and then it, you know, changes from the vertical view to yes. Go back to that part in your video. That would be, or right before then. That is a good visual of understanding those two rings, those two
Definitely is.
ecliptic cycles.
I was making
That's what I
comments
was
that no one
trying.
responded to. I was like, "Thanks, Walter, for giving us the best eclipse demonstration I could find." As a joke, I guess, or whatever.
Right. No. Anyway, I was answering a little bit of what I do know, but I don't know it all. But that that visual was very helpful for me to see the rings on that dome. Anyway, but that would be a good place in the video to go back to start over or right before then, as far as the presentation and continuing it.
Right. We can do that, and then we can stop if anyone has questions and talk through all the stuff because my database is open. Also, I think it's published and up to date, so if anyone has questions, everything should be in there with a bunch of extra stuff.
Yep. In the description of the YouTube video, you'll find all of Shane's links to all this relevant information.
That Eclipse tab is like a professional research paper with 7 other tabs, though, so have fun. We want the sun track, the moon track.
Best wealth of knowledge I've come across in a long time. Go check it out if you haven't.
What the hell was that? What the hell just...
The Æther demons are after you today. They do not want you to share your knowledge.
I was just gonna say I'm not even bothering streaming because mine was a half rec with no half intermittent volume where I couldn't control everything. It was the weirdest thing. So screw that for tonight. I'll just upload a video later. Right here, right? Or we good? Here's how it would look, right? And then you can model some time so it kind of spins, and you see how it's whipping around that ecliptic. Like that is the best demonstration of what the ecliptic actually is that I've ever seen. Yeah. Of course, the heliocentrist says, "Well, the whole world's tilted at that angle, 23.4 degrees." Nope, just the inclination of the sun, and the moon is at 5 degrees. So they're both inclined separately. See how it's a little bit different, and that's what makes the intercedence of these two luminaries so difficult. And actually, this model does also kind of a good job at describing what lunar nodes are. Each time one of these, each time the sun intersects with the moon, it intersects at one of these points. It is a node, and that a node kind of rotates the other way with it, essentially. But it doesn't. It's not a physical node. It's not a real thing. It's a hypothetical crossing of the paths that they denote, and that's where eclipses happen. Like the only places like eclipses happen. Matter of fact, let's go through a short little video I put together earlier just describing lunar nodes, which lo and behold are actually referred to as Rahu and Ketu from the old Hindu lore. That would be the places where the moons are. Mythologically, it's like the Ouroboros where the sun eats the moon, right? Because the moon passes by the sun. Cat knew it right off the top of her head. That's all mythology. Let's take a look at
Ancient Hindu scriptures tell us that once Lord Vishnu became angry with the demon Rahu for stealing the celestial liquor and beheaded him with his Sudarshan chakra. Thereafter his head started to move across the sky and eventually ended up eating the sun and the moon, causing their eclipse. The story was told to the people in ancient India as they were not interested in the scientific or the real meaning of Rahu and Ketu. They are nothing but two imaginary astronomical points called the ascending and descending lunar nodes respectively. To understand the nodes, let us first understand the ecliptic plane. It is the plane containing the orbit of the Earth around the Sun, or in a geocentric perspective, ecliptic plane is the plane containing the orbit of the Sun around the Earth, though means the same thing, just differing in the frame of reference. The moon also revolves around the Earth in 27.3 days, so it must also have a plane containing its own orbit around the Earth. Now these two planes are not the same. The plane of the orbit of moon is tilted by an angle of 5.14 degrees from the ecliptic plane. These 2 points are the lunar nodes. One is called the ascending node, as after crossing it, the moon goes above the ecliptic. This ascending node is called...
Right, so I always thought about ascending and descending as inclining and declining because of the literal intersection of the ecliptic planes, right? The sun's at one tilt and the moon's at another, and that makes it really hard for them to intersect, but that also denotes up and down pretty well.
Rahu. The point lying 180 degrees opposite to the ascending node is called the descending node, as the moon goes below the ecliptic after crossing this point in its orbit. This point is called Ketu in Indian astronomy. The line joining Rahu and Ketu, or the ascending and descending node, is called the line of nodes. Now, astrodynamics has proven that this line of nodes is not stationary. Due to precession of the lunar orbit, the line of nodes also revolves around the Earth and completes one revolution in every 18.5999 or 18.6 years. In other words, the lunar nodes keep sweeping along the orbit of Moon and completes one revolution around Earth in 18.6 years. Now we come to the relation of Rahu and Ketu at the lunar nodes. Now for eclipses to occur, two conditions have to be satisfied simultaneously. One, the Earth, Moon and Sun have to be in a straight line, and number two is that Moon must be at one of the nodes. This means that the Moon must be present at one of the nodes at the time of full moon or new moon for eclipses to occur. This explains why we don't experience eclipse with every new moon or full moon.
Yeah, this is like the best demonstration that I could find about it. Actually, the only reason I even knew it was because I saw it before and I remembered these nodes. And I was like, what are those things? Oh, it's the only place you can see them. Wow. Thanks, Walter. Right, and then I speed run it so we can talk about it. Like intersection point, intersection point, intersection point. Not necessarily the nodes, but that's exactly what they are. And then they move backwards as they progress, right? Like that. And that's the only time they can have eclipses, right there. And those things are always on the move. Right, so here has to be an alignment from the ecliptic and the incline, and then also has to be in with the phase. Like literally, the moon only approaches the sun when it's not there. Isn't that crazy? And just real quick, I'm gonna throw this couple minute video in there. It's gonna show exactly what I think is happening with eclipses and what I think is causing it, and what is potentially the actual answer. Right? I don't think we went over that yet, but it's bound to be asked. So let's go ahead and watch that. A. Mostly, right? What a good demonstration. Like best on the internet. Crazy. Thanks, Dearth.
People don't understand about.
And thanks, Cammy, of course.
In reality, things that we should be looking at. The atmosphere polarizes any electric field, polarizes light. Any light that's polarized is directionalized. Polarized filters crossing, have different effects.
And you know how I'm always on the hunt for common ground. Here I found some common ground with Colorado State University, wherein they acknowledge the fact that the light from the sun gets polarized as it passes through the atmosphere. And they further claim that bees actually depend on this polarization for navigation. That is pretty wild and mind-blowing if you ask me.
I don't much care for bees, but that's okay.
Pretty cool, right? Animals are awesome. Magnetic fields are generally pretty round. And keep in mind, the moon has its own magnetic field, and magnetic fields can also polarize light. So what would happen if we were to look at this through round filters instead of rectangular ones? Ooh yeah, bada boom bada bing! And you want to know what the most beautiful thing about this hypothesis is? It is easily testable. Just bring out a third filter and see if you can't bring the moon back into view during the next lunar eclipse.
All right, we can finally get into some eclipse predictions and pathways, right? So let's get going here. So let's start with here. So here's a video we put together a little while ago from an awesome channel called Revelation 13T, but pay no attention. We're going to go ahead and comment through here. So we've got the different types of eclipse cycles. Half eclipse is a 9-year. That's a SAR. That's where Saros comes from, right? So you have a SAR, a Saros, and then a 325 year is a complete circle of a 18-year lunar cycle, and then 651 would be a complete circle of that. So 325 and 326 we'll talk about in a little bit. I got many visuals for this. Actually from Dimbleby's book, who's the only known chronologist. This is where it gets complicated. He claims to have figured out all the eclipse cycles throughout all of time, going back to the time of creation, and he understands pretty much all the comparative gravy, so to speak, right? Excellent read. Without this book, I wouldn't have been able to do anything. I would have been stuck. So essentially, you got the 18-year cycle called the Saros, and you'll notice that there's that little guy over there, and he's got like an annular for a solar, lunar. He's got a little way to denote it. He knows exactly which type it'll be because that is also part of the cycle. So this is listing central eclipses, which are the biggest ones. And once they have a central eclipse, they either go north or south, depending on the node is ascending or descending. And after 18 years and 10 days, it comes back and does the same thing, except 30 degrees offset. So this would be the first time. This would be the first time that we saw a repeating pattern of eclipses. Let's see here. Yeah, so 649 over 36 period cycles. 36 times 18-year solar cycles is what it is. So 18 years times 36 in each constellation equals about, you guessed it, 641, which would be 651 years. We'll go over that a little bit later. Is the bisected it, right? So it's got down the middle the 325 and 326 cycle. Yep. So that's always what's going to happen is you have cycles upon cycles and wheels upon wheels upon wheels. The reason that it's 649 is because he's using a different type of year. It's a 360-day prophetic year, I believe. And then, well, we're not going to get into that, but it's essentially the same. Time is a bitch to tell. So the grand eclipse cycle, it's 5 rotations of 841. Just to be clear, dude, I got all the eclipse data. I was like, I can do it. I have it. And then I was like, fuck, what's a negative year? How do you... Oh, God, I don't know how to do any of this. It's all messed up. 841 revolutions. And he says that finally completed on December 21st, 1843. This is the author of All Past Time, Dimbleby. What's really neat is there's always a ratio, like the golden ratio, except it's persistent in all eclipse cycles and patterns, and call it the ratio of God, or whatever you want to say, the numeric ratio. It's equidistant, always present. So 18 years is like the basic block of the cycle. It's like the building block of the cyclical nature of the sky. 18 times 2, 36. 651 divided by 36 gives you 18. Right? So back and forth we go. These are the multiples and the factorials of the eclipse cycles. Again, this is the book that we're citing. I'll have it in the description, but it's Gleason's friend, essentially, Alex Gleason's friend. And he's the only known chronologist who literally, because of eclipse cycles, has traced the history of everything that's ever happened back through creation. So definitely worth a shot. Go check that out. Again, how come we don't have any chronologists anymore? Is that a dying profession, or do we run out? Did they get stamped out? I mean, what's going on with that? And moving right along. These are just the pretty much the testimonials to Dimbleby saying how awesome and great he was and how accurate, right? Let's read them. It's just like glowing reviews. I've read all your times, biggest pleasure, lifesaver, delight. They comment like it's a pleasure read, right? Like it didn't save the world or whatever. Anyway, I mean, imagine you went through all the work of lying to people and hiding their history, and then someone does something like that. Right here is the bread and review. This is the meat and potatoes of the whole cycle, right? So what it's telling you here is the types of eclipses, you know, the solar, partial, solar, lunar, partial, right? And that goes in a definite order. As you can see over here, it starts with 1 and it goes all the way to 70. And so this is a 70 eclipse solar cycle. A little bit different than how NASA does it, for sure, because they're going to do a succinct series not related to this, right? Each time they start a central eclipse, they keep it in a line. So what this is going to do... All right, so let's go through this again. We have in depth. So we have one solar year when the sun travels through each of the 12 signs of the zodiac, but it's not exact. And what happens is, as the sun goes forward through the 12 constellations at the spring equinox, the signs start shifting backwards, which is an astrological phenomenon, which in most of this we had to lean a little bit on astrological findings and research because we absolutely needed it. So when we're looking at a wheel within a wheel, right, it's spinning one way, but it's looking like it's spinning back the other way. It's an optical effect. They say it takes, you know, that big grand cycle of 25,800 years for this to occur. I'm not buying that, but that's been the story for a long time. For the sun to be in a different zodiac and a different equinox, etc. And let's go back to the Saros cycle and let's see exactly how this is pulled in here, how they use the cycle to go from the Saros and how they map it out and what is and how they relate to each other. Let's see here. So 360, right, times 2.5 divided by 180, which gives us the 1260 days we were looking at before. Right there is like the best depiction that I've ever found or built. Right, so this right there, that picture is like the best thing ever because I couldn't understand it at all, backwards, forwards, no matter what Patricia told me. I was like, I don't understand. What do you mean 18 what? But this picture, I was like, oh, I'm a team of 70 eclipses on average. It's a ratio. So there's 37 annular, or that could be, and it's total or annular, and that's the total amount for the whole cycle. So they break this down quite a lot. You get 33 partial, 37, 33 and 37 gives you 70. So basically what we're pointing out is a natural break, another harmonious break, a division, a split, if you will, of 70 into 37 and 33. And you know, astronomy has these splits all the time. So the first half of the 18-year Saros cycle is the eclipse cycle. Contains 33 eclipses, and the second half would contain 37. Interesting. It's almost like a mirror image, right? They always have, hey, look, a 37 is 33, 33 is 37. So we're just going to take a look at, of the 70, what is the relationship from one to the other, and how do we know which is going to be which? Right? There's always a couple, there's more than a little bit of symbolism with the names and the numbers, and some people are into gematria and all the symbols, and I'm not going to touch any of that. Not saying that it's not valid, but let's
It's
just
not.
keep on task with
Whatever.
just the cycles, right? So if we have, let's take a look here, another bisecting split, right? So Soros split in half, like we said, is 9. It's a SAR, that's a half a cycle, or a small cycle. And then if you do those small cycles repetitiously, you get 111.5, which is 1111 sono months, which is synodic months, which is that particular integer from the lunar periodicity, right? It's an eccentricity of the moon. Another interesting thing we're going to see is the types of eclipse as they go on, right? The order in which a lunar, solar, partial, annular appears is important and is trackable and is part of the cycle. So we do want to make sure that you understand every aspect of the cycle, which means from Soros to Soros, the comparisons are half cycles. So the ninth or the halfway through a Soros will compare with the next Soros, and full way through the same Soros will compare with this Soros. That's a little bit complicated, but essentially, if you are matching with yourself, it's a full cycle. Matching with a partner, half cycle, right? So if we start on October 17th, 2005, partial lunar, partial solar, all the way through. And I have an end date. Means that we are able to attribute real life years and dates eclipses. Before, all we had was, series 1 through 7. What would happen after 38 would be another 32. We didn't have any real way to place them contextually within our history because it's been messed with so much. You didn't know how to relate any which eclipse cycle. I know when I was first looking into this, I was like, oh, I got the pattern. I can do a whole cycle. And I was like, but which cycles? I don't know where any of them are. And that's the thing that they struggled with for a long time, until someone came along and became a chronologist and helped everyone out. So it's still in a pattern, right? We're talking about the pattern of eclipses, solar to lunar to partial to, it's all done according to the synchronicity. Well, it's dying in and out even now, huh? But it's all done to a pattern. So here is a specific Soros from NASA, which we're going to be going over a lot. Spent a lot of time with NASA on their website for eclipses, or should I say Fred's website. So this is Soros 136, and we're going to go through a whole series. So what a Soros... Oh, I had a whole thing for Fred, but like I said, I didn't get to it. You got to thank Fred every time you mention eclipses. Soros series is an eclipse, or a lunar eclipse will happen again 18 years and 10 days after every time it happens, right? Because that's the cycle. It'll be a little bit off from the place that it happened, but about that time plus 10 days, it will always happen again. So what a Soros is just a series of 18 years in between each eclipse, and it plots them together as a series, and that's what that Soros is. There's a lot more to it than that, and there's a lot more complicated things specifically, but pretty much what it is. So this one is on October 7th, 18 years and 10 or 11 days later. And then you see the 18 years from there, you bring it to October 17th, 21, 50 over here, and then you see a predictable pattern. Right? So it's kind of a predictable lunar cycle. Get a unique look at something else that'll help you understand it even more. So here is a completely detailed Soros cycle. Calling it, say, 9 of 36, but what it is remember that 36, all the way around 36 times. Eclipse repeat 36 times for a total. Well, that's what that's referring to, right? So this is 9 of 36. That's a real life date that we got put to one of these eclipses, so we can start to attribute, the chronology of history without having to rely on man or written word or anything like that. That's even cutting in and out now. What a bitch. You're looking at here. We'll look at the grand eclipse cycle of 651 years, which contains 2,520 individual eclipses. Right, and it's fascinating. But we're looking at 651. Within the 651 years, you'll see this eclipse 36 times, right? That essentially means that it's going to pop out and go into each of these constellations. So it starts here, right, in 18 years and 10 days. It goes here, 18 10 days. And it goes here 18. And it goes here 18 years, 10 days. Follow me? It's super hard to understand unless you have this visual here. Just incredible. Right, so it's just solidifying what we're talking about here. It starts here, or it starts whatever, right? And then 18 year, 10 days, 18 years, 10 days, 18 years, 10 days, 18 years, 10 days. It helps specifically in this case to visualize it mapped out on like a Gleason's map, because that would give you a circular path, and cyclical, and you'd be able to see the repetition much easier than on a stretched out Mercator's map, right? So weird when it looks like that. So it starts here and then it goes all the way around Zodiac, all the way, and it takes such a long time. 36 iterations of 18 years plus 10 days. So because of that little offset, it won't be exactly, and that's on the cycle goes, right? So within this period, this is how many eclipses would occur. So it's divided into the 12, zodiacs times 36. So higher rotation every year. This is just another way to describe what we were talking about. Here's an excellent picture to show you how it's going to look. Essentially, I did a couple other ones here. So here we go. 18, 18, 18, 18, 18, all the way across, and onward we go. All right, back to the video. Let's see. All right. So if you see it in Capricorn, right, then there's been 36 of the same eclipses on that date. You'll end up back at the same date and at the same location, and then that's called the grand eclipse cycle of 651 years. Now, that is the major building block of the celestial cycle of the sky. Right? That is the major component. If you know the details of one of these great astronomical years, you can predict anything and have predicted anything in perpetuity. Right? The only difference is when it repeats, it moves 10 degrees either north or south as the next iteration starts. I think it's 30. Well, we measure it according to the longitude latitude system, of course, for the WGS 84. And of course, depending on... that's the only thing that's heliocentric, is those coordinates, we can't map it on anywhere that's not a globe or whatever. But they never even said that. Which way it goes, that will determine the precession of the rest of those eclipses. They will keep repeating almost infinity, ad infinitum, right? So as far as our vantage point is, they always say, oh, it's because the Earth is spinning, but we know it's because the heavens are spinning above us, and when they're spinning a little bit faster, the difference in the speed means that when it comes complete cycle, it's just a little bit off from where it started on the face of the Earth. Makes perfect sense. Perfect sense. So there is a little bit more to go here with the zodiacs and where it would start, but we're not going to go into that right now. We're going to go back to this all-time Dimbleby paper, which again is fantastic. It says on page 122, right? He goes over this major cycle and he tells you when the last one was completed. So this was published in 1860s. He wrote that the last cycle completed in 1843. But right here is one of the most important slides that I've ever seen, really. That thing right there, my God. The Rosetta Stone eclipse cycles when you're trying to study historicity or major events, historical events, pharaohs, kings, books of old, the Bible, everything. This is what you need, right? So this is wonderful. He marked out each one of these all the way through time. And when you read the book, he uses all sorts of ways to do that. He calls it the 5 astronomical lines of time. There's solar cycles, lunar cycles, transits, actual history, and then books. Here we go. So he said that one ended right here, and that this one starts right at the end he had it on. So there's 36 eclipse cycles there. That's in a 651 cycle. That actually ends at the same point. But anyways, what we're going to show is how it goes here. So he's got the last 651 cycles starting on December 27th, the year 1210, and it moves every 18 years to a new Saros, 18 plus 18 plus 18, all the way down. And then we finally get to, like, say, 1300 to 1318. So it jumps 18 years, right? That's what we're looking at. Starting eclipse, which is called central eclipse, the first eclipse of each Saros cycle. So that's very important. The central eclipse means that it's the first in a series, and from there will determine whether the precession will go north or south. depending on whether the node it came from was in the ascending or descending. Super easy, super basic to understand. Right, so you work your way down the line until you get to this one. This is where you get 36 of them. You start all the way back at the beginning again, right? That would be, what, 18 to that year, 1842. And if we happen to pretend to do all this extra work, then we'll finish that cycle, right? 1842 plus 18 is January. There's a huge change there. It looks like it's not 18, but it is. Now we're at 1861. So this is a new 651-year cycle. This would be cycle 1 of 36. Remember how we said the other one was 9 of 36? We said it's attributed it to being about 9 of 36. That's because we knew exactly where that would come from and how far along in its theme it was. So let's see, on January 22nd, 1879, right there, we started next Saros cycle. On the list goes 1897 to 1915 to 1933 to 1951 to 1969 to 1987 till we got to the 9th eclipse cycle, which is the 9 of the 36. That would be on April 8th, 2005. So, again, we've just completed an exercise, added the periodicity to one of these new eclipses, and we had predicted the next eclipse, right? That's actually one of the current cycles that we're still in, that's still going on today. 9 of 36. That's the big picture of all the stuff we're looking at. Because of this, we know exactly what number of eclipse cycle this is and how many more it came from, right? So, like all the way from 1 to 22 and then to 44. So, the other important thing about this is that we line them up like this. You see the relationships between each cycle that NASA would obfuscate for the nature of the way that they present the data or give it to you, right? The way that they present the data is really strange. First of all, they divide it between solar and lunar eclipses. All 5,000 Almanac 1, 5,000 Almanac and the other. When each cycle is bound to have a mixture of both, you're unable to complete any cycle with just one or the other. Well, why would they do that? Anyway, here we have two cycles laid up together, 9 and 10, and then we can see the half cycle periodicity, right? So watch what happens here. Let's start with the beginning of the cycle. 18 years later, in the year 2023, we have the same eclipse, right? Mirrored it. Went through that. That's the pattern. They just shift over 18 years plus 18 years, about 10 or 11 days. If you see a total solar or annual eclipse on October 3rd, 2005, you know damn well in 18 years, in 10 days, you're going to see another eclipse, but that's going to be on October 14th, right? And if you just keep going down the list, you'll see a partial lunar on October 17th, 2005, see itself on October 28th, 2023. Then you just keep going on, and you see how they all match up. They all match up. So you can go down this way the list, and then here's all the Saros 9 continued. June 1st, right? They all match up. If you didn't know this, like if we look at between 9 and 10, watch what happens with the halfway. So in 1 year, right, we know exactly what kind of eclipse. In a half year, in a SAR, like we started before, in just maybe 9 years, right? Then we can see 9 and 10, right? So right here. Here we go, right? So look at the first one, April 5th, and 9 years from that point, from April 8th, 2005. Go 9 years. Solar to lunar, partial lunar to partial solar, etc. It's opposite all the way through, meaning the order at which they eclipse is also definitely part of the cycle. Splitting it in half. Then it's 9 years, 5 days, half a Saros over SAR, and then you check it out. Get the opposite reflection. So, because it was a solar, then you get a lunar. You get the opposite. You get the inverse. You get the inverse of the periodicity, right? If it's a path, then it would be the opposing apex, right? Right when you're at the furthest away. So, you get opposite reflection. You see a solar, not a solar, but a lunar eclipse. And that's how the Saros cycles 9 and 10 would compare. And every cycle compares halfway like that. And if you never saw them together, you'd never know that. You never know how linked and similar they all were. You'd think they were all different. I gotta think that's kind of been the goal. They don't want you to know how linked they are, right? All the pattern is always a right. So from the next one, you'll see partial of a total solar, then a total lunar. 17. Partial lunar, then a partial solar.
It was too good. Gives us time to stare at this amazing chart. Wow.
And then it goes. Bye-bye.
Yep. Epic. When you get too epic, you see what happens.
I mean, the CIA's got to be onto him now.
They're
They're just flipping their switches in the background.
like, wait, this makes too much sense. Stop the presses. This is way too good. Stop that. No, no, no. Interference.
Well,
So, seems like you know a lot about this. Cat? False?
a bit. Most of my knowledge comes from an astrology background, so the nodes made sense. The circular ring patterns, I guess, as they cross in the sky. So that is the visual helps on the model for sure to be able to relate and understand those inclines, declines, where those orbits pass, because it's also confusing, like it says, because that is constantly moving. So you have their rotations are both different. The moon, the sun, their angles are different, and the sky is moving. So we've got it is a big clock, and they have basically tripped us out of knowing how to read it. They used to know how to read it really well, and now they just put a round thing on the wall with arms. But
Yeah.
the dance they do is
The
a lot more
Vedics.
understand.
Well, they
Go
also
ahead. I
split
was
the
saying the
clock up
Vedics, right?
into two 12s.
Yeah.
Yeah. It should just be a 24, right?
Yeah.
It
Totally
would make more
disconnected us from the actual clock.
The full circle, yeah.
That one
Yeah.
was my fault.
Oh, that was
And he's
you?
back.
I kicked out my whole fucking router and face planted on the ground, dude. It was disastrous. I was like, that's definitely my fault.
You got too excited about how good your video is.
No, it's my dog, dude. Of course, fucking right in front of my
God.
feet.
Well, you fixed that. You fixed that that beeping of the fire detector. You might be nicer
All
to.
right. Let me go get it right now, my motherfucker.
You got the battery, right? Didn't you order it?
It is definitely
Just
in
get-
my hand. Hear it? You hear it?
Let's get the Uber Eats
No
guy to
way.
install it
This should
for
be
you.
this should be monumental to hear this. Actually, go in and be.
Dude, it's gonna like beep forever now. All right.
I just want you to do it right now.
Lunar eclipse, and that's how the Soros cycles 9 and 10 would compare. And every cycle compares halfway like that. And if you never saw them together, you'd never know that. You never know how linked and similar they all were. You'd think they were all different. I gotta think that's kind of been the goal. They don't want you to know how linked they are, right? All the pattern is always a right. So from the next one, you'll see partial of a total solar, then a total lunar. 17. Partial lunar, then a partial solar. So that's just like a. Right? Take a look here. You might be laughing, but there's always an antipode, right? Do you hear it? Is it beeping? So, teams of 70 eclipses typically on average. It can be different, more or less. Divided into stars.
You have to ask us because you
You'll
can't
have
hear it
70
anymore.
paired
Huh?
up in sets of 2. Remember, because when you have one, then you know instantly 18 years, 10 days from that point, you have another one. So anytime you see one, you have two. That's how duplicity works. Remember that is parallels to the number 70 all the way through. Opposites, of course, discharging and charging of magnetism and attraction, the fundamental forces of nature. All this seems to have a eclipse cycle, which is meant for us to know how many eclipse cycles or how much time has passed, right? So 354 days would be a lunar year, and it's a little bit shorter than a solar year. And then if you look at the patterns, the first central eclipse was over there. And then you get 354 days later, brings you to March 29th, and that gives you another solar eclipse. Now this is going to be an important pattern as well, right? Check it out with the other one. On April 20th, 354 days again. Saros number 10 starts out that way. After the solar eclipse that announces the beginning of this Saros cycle, 354 days later, we get to April 8th, 14, just as it says here, right? 354-day period. What's going on here? That's amazing, right? I don't know what it is to make, other than patterns and cyclical nature of God. He likes to use, things like the golden ratio and wonderful fractals and factorials that work wonderful things. So, now that we're taking a look at the similarities between the two cycles, we can take a look at the other cycles, right? The ones that are missing or coming or going, essentially, right? If this is a spherical lineup of the moon, how the sun is going to intersect with the moon, sometimes when it doesn't hit exactly, it either goes far off, low, high, what have you, and those are marked to it, and they're either marked as coming, going. If it hits the outer edge and it's going to come in next time, then in the next couple it's going to hit the dead center total solar eclipse, for instance. But this is a nice way to show you how the teams of eclipses come and go, right? Or what determines when one makes a team doesn't, what determines what makes one type of eclipse for. So, yeah, individual eclipses are born, let's say, and they last about 12 years. So you're down the middle, and it's going to die out, then it's completely out, right? So this is just a way to encapsulate penumbral and numbral, as to use, say, coming and going. But it's really just a lifetime of an individual eclipse that lasts on average 1,260 years. And every 1,200 years, one dies, comes back, or one starts up again, essentially. Somewhere else, another one comes in. So it's really all just cyclical in nature, yin and yang, death and life, up and down, coming and going. So also parallels all over the place to the numbers. We're not going to go into that right now because we have to stay on track. We have to get through the eclipse cycle itself before we talk about all the other stuff about eclipses that everyone wants to throw in there. So it's the natural way. If someone gets up, let's say an eclipse of 1260 years, he reaches 1260, he moves out of the circle, essentially, right? This is a perpetual cycle. It has limits and it has variation. So, oh my god, no beep. All these cycles, there's always a variation. Just been like the solar year right now. It's almost 365, but not quite, right? It's 365.24 or whatever. It's that difference that causes the other cycles of time. And when you're looking at how nature works and how God works and how these patterns tend to work, it's what allows for growth, essentially, and if that potential eccentricity, the cause of everything, seasons, everything needs change, right? So things that exist for a reason, wonderful to see that in effect. Just like when we have seasons, right? We need spring, summer, winter, fall. If we didn't have them, we'd all be in the same season all the time. We wouldn't have life, we wouldn't have death, things would grow, etc. What I'm getting at. Let's just take a look here. Let's see this. Perfect. And then we'll just let it play, I think. So she mapped out the teams of eclipses is what she's going to do here, and I had it animated. So again, start out with the tropic lines. We're going to do the team of eclipse. We got one, and then we got the other one. So right away we got two. There it is. 1, 2, done. And we got a couple more. We got flooded 2 at once. That's 4. 2 over here, 2 over there. And then we're going to see at the end of this, when they rotate 20 degrees, that's the perpetual bigger macro cycle that they all are a part of. If the lunar cycle is a building block, that's what they build together. And then here's kind of a visualization of what it would do when you put them in a circle and you map them across the tree, right? Once you get this team situated, all they do is rotate and create the next giant 651-year cycle, right? It's a really interesting way to visualize what's happening, and it's decidedly against what NASA is trying to get you to see. So here's another visualization where I ran around the outside, just to show that the teams of eclipses will precess through the equinox, right? The precession is what causes the giant cycle. So if we have mapped out all of these eclipses and then move them 10 degrees to the right, we have a whole nother cycle, don't we? And this is just some other visuals that I put together. Really, she made some awesome art, and we spent some time in Canva animating it to make it nice and professional. And I think
I did
a really good visualization of what we're
many
talking
hours.
about. So you see how they travel together? That's an indicator.
Dude, that was my favorite right there.
That we were talking about before. And this one is just a really cool image she made of the actual path of the moon. She put the phases of the moon in an...
You know how like the sun does like a toroidal fucking donut and the moon does like a infinity atom toroidal like counterspatial thing? It's kind of crazy.
Elliptical orbit, and then did like a combination of elliptical orbits all around. Now we can look at some of the other images, right? So this one I had said was key. It depicts the micro, the macro, and the grand cycles, but more importantly, it's the basics here, right? We haven't gone over the basics yet. The parts of the lunar periodicity and attributes that govern what type of eclipse will be next.
Synodic, draconic,
said,
animalistic.
see if something has happened before and when it will happen again.
Dude, honestly,
so we have
they've made up like 7 terms for like different shades of aspects of the moon, which furthest closer.
Perigee and the apogee just means the furthest point and the closest point, and that with the moon has on its orbit. That's all that one means. And this guy did some awesome math, which we're going to go through, but it essentially just means that this is how they determine what's going to be the same solar eclipse. It's the alignment, which is the synodic month, and then it's the true alignment through the moon's node, which is the draconic month, and then the same distance between the moon and the earth, so the animalistic month. So those are the 3 terms that we haven't dealt with yet, but they do mean essentially what type of eclipse is going to be next. So we have the synodic, meaning the alignment of the sun and the moon plane, and then you have the draconic, which is the true alignment through the moon's node, meaning that once it passes its node, the next time it passes its node would be the next year. The same distance between the moon and the sun. So if it's at point X, when it will be at point X again. That's what an animalistic month is, right? So those 3 are not super, well, they're kind of important, but we're not going to deal with them a whole bunch, I guess is what I meant to say. They are integral in determining which eclipse is next, but... So again, conditions have to be met as always, the same distance, the true alignment, and right from the ecliptic plane. So it has to be exactly where it started from to satisfy all of these, and we'll get to what that means in a second. We know what a solar cycle is, exactly 18 years, 11 days, 8 hours. That 8 hours is what precesses it a little bit further each time. Right off the NASA website, of course, the periodicity and recurrence of eclipses is governed by the solar cycle, which is this giant 18-year, 11-day cycle. And then it goes over the natural harmony between 3 of the moon's orbital periods, or essentially those 3 integers that we had hinted at earlier: synodic month, new moon to new moon; anomalistic month, perigee to perigee, or furthest to furthest; draconic month, node to node. So when it passes its node, the next time it's back at the node. So when you do a complete Soros, right, those different months actually add up to all the same amount of time, crazily enough, right? So even though they're 29.5, 27.5, 27.2, one Soros is equal to 223 synodic months, 239 anomalistic months, and 242 draconic months. So what a weird serendipity periodicity that is, right? They also equal to the same thing within a couple hours. So this is just going to go into what separates a Soros from the next Soros and why they're not identical. Like we said before, this was the main difference, that 8 hours. It says The extra third day of placement means that the Earth must rotate an additional 8 hours or 120 degrees each cycle. Of course, for us, that means the sky must rotate an extra 120 degrees, which places it in a different spot on Earth. Right? What it does, though, is it does this 3 times, so this results in the shifting of each successive path by 120 degrees westward. So a Saros series returns to about the same geographic location every 3 Saruses, or 54 years each. But there's only a certain amount of the Earth to go to, right? 120 degrees, 120 degrees, 120 degrees. That's almost a third of the Earth. Whoa! It would be on April the again, say an eclipse of 12/6.
Oh man, I suck.
The periodicity and recurrence of the planets is what the Saros cycle.
Not bad though. You got
this giant 18-year, 11-day cycle, and then it goes over the natural harmony between 3 of the moon's orbit into those different hours. It says the extra third day of placement means that the Earth must rotate an additional 8 hours or 120 degrees each cycle. Of course, for us, that means the sky must rotate an extra 120 degrees, which places it in a different spot on Earth. Right? What it does, though, is it does this 3 times, so this results in the shifting of each successive path by 120 degrees westward. So a Saros series returns to about the same geographic location every 3 Saruses, or 54 years each. But there's only a certain amount of the Earth to go to, right? 120 degrees, 120 degrees, 120 degrees. That's almost a third of the Earth. It displaces it by the next time, okay? And that's the same thing for all of us. And let's see what else we have. So, my boy here did some math on a spreadsheet and figured out, he just did pretty much an aggregate summary of all the lunar eclipse data that they have. What about is the mean time for each one of these things? And he essentially figured it out to a heck of a function here. Let's see if we can get the results. So there we go. We took the means of all the synodic, anomalistic, and draconic months over each period for each Saros and each great cycle, and he did the mean average and figured out more or less every time it's going to be 6,585 days and 10 hours, which is about average, right? It's about average, and that's a very useful determination, though. The fact that he's able to do that was very impressive. Well, to me, and I guess it's probably because it's a nerd.
Fucking audio died again. That's okay. This guy has like the coolest movie, but it's in globe speak, so people are gonna get triggered. But it's like a 5-minute rendition of how to do everything I just said.
Moon eclipse, we need to notice how the moon moves in the sky. Point a camera straight up and take a picture of the sky when the moon is overhead. Then wait exactly 24 hours and take another. If we compare the 2 photos, we can see that the moon has shifted its position in the sky. If we take another picture 1 day later, we'll see that it has shifted again by the same amount. What this shows us is that the moon is gradually drifting across the sky. Over the course of several weeks, the moon will cross the night sky and will begin to be visible during the day, becoming a thinner and thinner crescent. We lose sight of the moon as it gets close to the sun, and then sometimes the moon and sun perfectly coincide, a dramatic event known as a total solar eclipse. One way to predict eclipses is to wait until an eclipse is happening and then try and figure out when will this happen again. After an eclipse, the moon has drifted past the sun. In order to coincide again, the moon will have to complete a full lap around the sky. If we carefully measure the moon's speed, we can predict that this should take about 29.5 days. So we wait until 29.5 days have passed, and nothing happens. The moon missed somehow. A closer look at the moon's motion reveals why. In addition to its sideways travel, we can also make out a slight up and down motion. In order to cause an eclipse, the moon needs to be vertically aligned with the sun. It crosses this line once every 13.6 days, completing a full up and down cycle after 27.2 days. So let's start with an eclipse and follow the full motion of the moon. It completes an up and down cycle after 27.2 days. It reaches the sun after 29.5 days, but is now 2 days into its next up and down cycle, causing it to miss. If we follow the moon for another lap around the sky, we see that things get even worse. It completes its second up and down cycle after 54.4 days, but doesn't reach the sun for another 5 days after that, missing by an even wider margin. If we keep our attention on the sun, we'll see the moon fly by every 29.5 days.
Right here's a pretty good animation, I think, when I was thinking about it earlier, and it's like by far the best way to describe all the near misses that they have on their intersecting planes there, and why the nodes actually are a thing, because they actually connect so rarely.
There are many close calls, but a total eclipse will not occur until the up and down cycle matches up with the around the sky cycle.
They do eventually come back into sync after 6,585.3 days.
Or 18 years, 11 days, and 8 hours. On August 21st, 2017, an eclipse will be visible from America. If we look down from space during an eclipse, we see the moon's shadow move across the Earth's surface. Anyone standing in the path of this shadow will witness an eclipse and will be able to predict that there should be another eclipse in 18 years, 11 days, and 8 hours. So let's fast forward 18 years and 11 days. The eclipse still won't start for another 8 hours, and during that time, the Earth continues to rotate. So when the moon's shadow does cut across the Earth, it will leave a trail in a different location, this time cutting across China and heading out into the Pacific Ocean. 18 years after that, a nearly identical path will cross from North Africa into Southeast Asia. This family of repeating eclipses is known as a Saros cycle. This particular cycle is Saros number 145. Every eclipse belongs to a particular Saros, and there are currently 40 active Saros cycles, each generating its own sequence of eclipses on a repeating 18-year schedule. If you look at a map showing eclipse paths over a period of time, such as this one, which shows all of the total eclipses from 2001 to 2025, you can often spot pairs of eclipses that belong to the same Saros. Notice these two paths have a similar shape and are about a third of the way around the Earth from each other. If we check their dates, we see this one happened in 2003, and this one occurs 18
years later.
2021. These are two sequential eclipses from Saros 152. This path from 2001 is a close match to this path from 2019. These are eclipses from Saros 127. Finally, these S-shaped paths are 18 years apart, representing Saros 139. Although these paths are similar looking, they are not exactly the same. Eclipse paths in a Saros cycle gradually change shape over time. For instance, Saros 145 produced its first total eclipse on June 17, 1909, with a path that nearly crossed the North Pole. 18 years later, a slightly bigger path cut around the Arctic Ocean. Cycle after cycle, these sequential eclipses worked their way south, leading to the American eclipse of 2017. This Saros will continue producing eclipses for another 600 years. Its final total eclipse will be visible from Antarctica on September 9th, 2648.
Dude, that dude has like out of all the eclipse movies I watched, and I watched a bunch, that dude by far had the most concise, like, well put together thing I'd ever seen. Anyway.
Yeah, too bad he used a ball.
Yeah, dude, I planned to remove all that, but I was like, 5-minute video, dude. It's just like, I'm just gonna let you guys suffer. But as soon as he said it, I hurt on the inside too. I was like, oh, he said from space.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess my sound out again. But here's the kicker, essentially, right? So because we can denote these periods of 651 years, and then we can tie them back to historical events, then there's a finite amount of them. Right? It turns out if you unwind everything that's ever happened in the sky, it's exactly like 61 years old, or about almost 6,000 by the time by this year, because that was 1863. So that shit's crazy.
As the actual age, or you mean as the beginning of everything, or just the beginning of that cycle, the larger cycle?
No, the beginning of everything, dude. Like, if you can't unwind it anymore, then there's nothing left before it happened, right? Like, you know how Iwarnan was speculating on, well, the sun's eccentricity is because there was a cataclysm event and its wobble is reducing and it's ever getting back to it, and it's like, yeah, no, none of that happened. We don't have anywhere near enough time. The real reason is if it wasn't like that, we wouldn't have seasons change, catalyst, life and death, etc. So, whatever. It has to be that way. And
can I just mention as well, like, if there really was like an expansion from a center point, what you really expect is an exponential increase in all of these numbers.
Yep. So I think this guy is pretty much just telling you how much his time's been fucked with, right? And how they put you a slave to the calendar and then change all the shit, and then daylight savings time, and then change the whole calendar, and then add some holidays, and then throw some into calendar days, and then it's leap year, and then you're like, oh fuck, I don't know what the hell. No wonder why no one knows what the hell's going on.
Yeah.
But literally, like, we were given this wonderful sky clock, and we've been like wandering around with the thumbs in our asses, going, "What do we do with the sky?" I don't know. I think it's gas planets and giants and fucking all sorts of shit. I'm like, oh cool, oh, cool, man, yeah.
That's what they told us. Must be that.
So, like, I kind of ran out of time. The vacuum. So, okay, let's try that.
Has this made you a young Earth creationist? Is that what you just said?
Well, yeah. Now I'm pretty sure that's how old the civilization is, bro. Like, I don't have any other evidence, and some specifically wonderful, like, overwhelming evidence for. So, why would I think anything else?
The civilization or the cycle in the sky?
Like, dude, as far as I can tell, everything. I'm not willing to say like Earth, because the Earth, like the ground might be forever, but everything else that we know, let's call it civilization, is like 6,000 years old. Does that make sense to you, or does that throw you off?
Well, I would have to study it myself and have to make perfect sense of it still, but
yeah, like, if, hey, this is how the sky works, right? This is how many cycles there have been. And like, if you unwind it, there's only this many cycles, and you're like, huh, that's simple, but like can't be, dude, right?
Couldn't there be like another pattern beyond that, like a cycle?
Yeah, there could be, dude. But here's the thing: they've been specifically fucking with time to get us to think it's older, so they can slide in things like, tiny, minute changes over billions of generations called evolution to make you think you came from a retarded fish monkey that swapped out of the water, right? You got to think about what their motivation is.
True, but also there could be some kind of cataclysmic change that happens every 6,000 years or whatever.
I mean, maybe, but there's lots of other stuff that says there's like nothing past that, right? There was that magnetic radiation sweep thing where they found the resonance or whatever that was getting weaker at a rate. I don't remember any of it, but the conclusion was that it was like only because the Earth was 6,000 years old or something weird that I found uncorroborated at that point. But this book from Dimbleby. So one of the giant sidetracks to it is when I got this book, I just kept fucking going into it. It's so much shit in here. He catalogs like everything. The dude knows like everything that's ever happened, essentially. And I'm like, oh, is that what that is? Oh, who is that? Whoa, no way. But like, essentially,
it's hard to find.
Like, it's not hard. It's just, I mean, it is hard. But honestly, it was like the key. I was like, dude, Stone, I need some help. Turns out I need to know everything that's ever happened with a proper date. It's like, oh,
got a minute?
Yeah,
you got a minute?
Seems like that might be challenging. And then I'm like, crap, I don't even know how to do years. Like, they gave it to me in negative years. We had BCE, and then they changed it, and then there's the birth of Christ, and I'm like, what the hell? Like, what do I do with a negative 2000 Soros cycle? Okay, all right.
Right.
So it turns out
you figured it out for you, or help figure it out?
No, there was the book. I found the book. It was Patricia. She said, like, here's all the answers. I'm like, oh my God. But like, when you have all the cycles, but no context, it's useless. Like, I know exactly what it's going to do next, but I don't know I have no idea how long it's been doing it, right? That's like the ultimate pitfall. But if you're like, hey, I know exactly what it's doing, and I know exactly how long it's been doing it, ultimate power, essentially.
Right.
So this guy goes through all this stuff, essentially providing the framework for us to be where we're at. And then there's this other guy that I haven't even read that's got like 7 books that literally take what this guy did and take all the eclipse cycles and they chronologized. I don't even know. They go through history and pick up all the correct dates of all the shit that's ever happened, and it turns out everything is bunk, right? Like all the places are fucked. Everyone's been lied to. It's all been lied to in the same way, and all the eclipse cycles always lead back to the same. So it's like the trail back to like sanity. It's to figure out what really happened to history and figure out what's really been added. That's sort of 1,000 years or whatever the hell, whatever they did, and we can just match it up to the sky. And it's like, well, if you inserted 1,000 years, you're missing a great astronomical year and a half, bro. I don't know what you're talking about.
So you'd imagine that the people that are telling us the narrative they want us to believe definitely know all of this and more. because that's
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's why they tell us all the time how old everything is and how long it's been here, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And how proud they are about predicting shit, but it's all just based on the solar cycle.
Oh yeah, so about that, we haven't really gotten to the like, is it heliocentric yet, right? I think I did a part in the video, but it might have been all freaking muted. So if you go to like McToon or Google Level 1 or anything doesn't really know about it, they'll be like, yeah, it's heliocentric because it uses lunar and solar ephemeruses. Like, oh yeah, it's the same thing that Walter Bisson told me, like right off the cuff, which I like immediately looked into and was like, oh, this did not work out. Hold on, let me get this up.
Right.
It's like, all right, so you cited like, yeah, these two get cited a lot. It's ephemeris ELP 2000 and VSOP 87. So essentially, right, it just says
Son of a bitch.
It's unvarying Keplerian ellipses. Everyone familiar with those?
Oh yeah.
Okay. All right. So optical things in the sky, pathways completely devoid of mass. Got it. Cool. And then it says considered only the gravitational attraction between the sun and each planet, while keeping unvarying Keplerian eclipses. Okay, so you're doing two things. It looks like, and then it's like, okay, we were able to prove with accuracy, but how much did they improve? You say? How much was all this worth? How much is it exclusive to heliocentrism? Well, 0.00001 arcsecond and also 0.0005 arcsecond in longitude. So negligible, in fact, that like if a butterfly farted in the wind, the whole thing would be off. They don't even bother applying it because the lunar limb variation by itself is throwing that way to hell. Literally, they concluded, hey, we did a lot of work and a bunch of calculations, and it doesn't mean dick. We decided not to use it. Good luck. Oh. So wait, what was exclusive about this? Not hold on. Am I missing something? Hold on. So this one is basis on increased periodic terms. So what they did was 37,862 extra terms for the moon's longitude, 77,000 for the latitude. Literally, they just added a bunch of cycles to it to see how accurate they would get, because obviously the more you're off, the quicker you'll see it. But if you're off a little bit, it'll show up after a long while, right? And it'll show up in giant exponential numbers. But then it says, oh, look, again, we did a lot of work and it has no practical impact on the present work. Okay, cool. So it didn't use it, doesn't matter. Again, okay, all right. It's super exclusive. I'm definitely feeling comfortable with my heliocentric proof at this point, right? I'm going to go tell other people to look here, I think. But then, like, oh, actually, what you need is a geocentric ephemeris, because everything is geocentric, because don't be fucking retarded. So, like, every time you have to go look at an ephemeris, it's like, well, we have the geocentric ephemeris. Like, hold on, I thought that we were trying to prove heliocentric. Well, one of those is from a satellite near Jupiter. Oh, okay. And we determined that because, oh, right, we didn't, because it's on an ECI frame, which is self-corrected for, oh, fuck me. Right, like this is so ridiculous as proof of anything that I'm like, all right, that's dumb. The next thing, though, right, is they always say the shadow. You definitely can't predict a shadow, which was like on Twitter the first thing I did just to be a dickhead because I knew they were going to do that. However, it is kind of hard. Like the way that they had to do it was some monk made an observation of a shadow of some eclipse that he then used to astutely like modify the eclipse prediction to see like, well, the next cycle it's going to be like this much this way or whatever. He made an observation of a shadow that was an optical like radii, and then he increased another predicament by an amount of Earth's radii. So these are all optical bullshit measurements, right? So let's see. But my shadow, I think I called it. There you go. Enlarged by about 1/41st to fit the timings made of the thing, and then over the next 2 centuries, it showed that actually they increased it one breath of shadow, and they've changed it a couple times, and it's a wonderful observation, and that's why that you can't have it on a heliocentric. No, what happens is they've adjusted a ratio they created a integer amount, which when you predict eclipses, you have to modify this by this integer. And if it's fat, it's big, and if it's little, it's small. It's pretty easy. It's just based on the size of a shadow. It literally has nothing to do with anything except all the optics that it was always about, right? What's the other one? So funny, dude. It's like they asked Fred about the shadow prediction for the heliocentric stuff, and he's like, "Yeah, it doesn't really matter. Pick your favorite flavor." It's like, what? Yeah, no, it's you guys just do whatever you want. Like, its accuracy is cool, but I'm like, Fred, that doesn't fucking matter. All right, so the thing that is hard though is the actual like drawing of the shadow. But of course, the thing about Excel is you only got to do a thing once to do it like forever. And even though that was really hard, it still got done. So you can just you can just endlessly compute Besselian elements because I'm a G. But actually, what you have to do is you take this radial of like a penumbral, right? And you take this coordinate system with an L2 and L1, which you're going to use Cartesian. You're going to put yourself at the center of a celestial sphere. Hey, we like those a lot. We know what's up going on with that. And then you're going to predict declination and up the angle based in units of astral units of Earth's supposed radius. And then that's going to draw the shadow. And I mean, boy, is that heliocentric or what? A celestial sphere, like by definition and by use and by practicality, is literally geocentric. Like, cannot be anything else. So I'm confused again as to the proof for the heliocentric portion. Anyway, I think I'm good.
But you confused that the geocentric ball, how they had the ball as the geocentric way of figuring it out. Like, how is it not a ball? It works just the same over flat Earth.
Yeah, dude, I'm confused as to the people who are always wrong about the shit they don't know about are continuing to be wrong about the shit they don't know about. Wow, it's crazy. But yeah, there's a lot of shit on here, and we got a lot of reading to do. And the other dude is like literally going through all of history using eclipse cycles and pointing out inconsistencies and incongruities that literally are like lining up like glaring films, right? We didn't know what to look for before we had all these books, but now I'm like, oh my god, I was just gonna sit down and do all that work, and somebody already did it. That's so much better.
Yep. Seems to be what you guys are running into more than anything is everyone's already done the work. It's a matter of finding out who did it.
No, you don't even care about who did it. You just got to use it.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. Great job.
So much, man. There's so much to do. It's one of those things. Like I was on it for like 12 hours today. I was just sitting here doing this stuff.
Nice.
But then I just kept making more, and I was like, "Crap, fucking Dimbleby, you got me again. I can't be doing this right now. I gotta go."
Yeah, you could go back through and make another cleaner version without us talking over.
Oh yeah,
it.
Yeah, because I got
no fire alarm beep or anything.
I gotta fix that, and I gotta do the actual ending before I put it up on a channel. But it's already like over an hour, so it's gonna be weird. It's gonna be.
I would suggest the music was too loud and also too annoying.
Sure was. Sure was, dude. Put it in, but didn't even listen to it. Put it in the last second. Hated it immediately. Listened to the whole thing.
Yeah.
I was like, fuck.
That's what Kenny was saying. I was just going to say I'm at Kenny's house, and I said, "Yeah, are you watching this? This is great." And he's like, "Yeah, but the music's terrible." And I was like, "Yeah, last time that happened, we told him, he agreed right away."
Yep.
Same thing.
Dude, what happened was I didn't listen to it first because I literally rendered it like right before I came in. So if I had it, I'd been like, "Ugh, get the shit out of here."
Oh well, you can redo it. Sorry, Toby, go ahead. How could there not be?
Dude, there's automatic Besselian element calculators, and I can predict shadows out my ass. So I don't know. People have been talking about this for 2 months, dude, but I'm pretty sure I'm undefeated.
Nice.
Crushed it, brother. Yo, Ion's cat wanted to know what are some examples of the incongruities that you were talking about earlier.
Oh, Oh yeah, like so every like shadow goes the wrong way or something. The way it lines up, the distance, the way that. Hold on, I made a whole list. I meant to put that in, but I was already doing so much bashing on eclipses. I'm like, I should get to the cycles at some point.
Yeah, you went hard, dude. That was a lot.
You know, I feel like everyone's gonna be like, but what causes the shadow, dude? That's gonna be the only thing. So I was like, I'm just gonna hit that in the bud.
Gotta get that one. That was a lot.
Gotta kill it so it doesn't attack me. But also, there's like many, many, many things that don't add up. And they're like, no, it's the shadow. And I'm like, yeah, but what about all the times that it's not? Like, what's up with those?
Yeah, there's a lot of super interesting stuff.
Dude, the age of the age of the world. Also, in this Bible says the same thing. Ironically, not ironically, but like coincidentally, I meant to put it in there. It's like non-ironically, it's like totally plausibly, I guess.
Do you ever present any of this stuff over at the Globe tiers servers?
No, I don't even care. I don't. Why would I even tell them cool stuff?
No, it's just I'd be interested to know how hard they cried about it.
They wouldn't know any of this. The only people who are fighting me were like Doofus, who was just trying to be like, "How do you predict the shadow?" And I'm like, "It's a fucking coefficient for both, bro." I'm telling you, he's like, "They're different." I'm like, "Yeah, they're not different. There's no other column in the data for the thing that you think is there that you don't know about."
Yeah. Well, Doofus will fight you on anything, even though he doesn't know anything. But I just I wonder what the guys who kind of get it would say. You know what I mean? Anyway,
There's no column for the thing that you think exists.
I'm like, I have all the data, dude. It's not there. What is there? This.
Yeah, that's a classic, dude.
I didn't even get to show the spreadsheets or anything, but it's like, yeah, so if you know how to do all that, then you can pull all the data that they have. Then if you're good at Excel, then you can like put it together and you can be like, oh, I have everything forever then. But then your only problem is, how do I find that single lifeline of unit to find one date? And then on comes Dibbleby and he's like, I'm a chronologist. I'm like, oh, fucking sure. The other dude's like, I'm a Eclipse stenographer. I go through history and use eclipses to gauge out bullshit.
I'm an Eclipse stenographer.
Like, okay. I want to see what his travels are like, right? Plus, there's like 6 really big, huge books that like have just so much shit in them, and I can't even get past Dimbleby over here. Oh, I had so many graphs too. Oh, dude, I have a whole Google Earth file with like a whole Saros link, so we can play with the mapping, and then I can shoot it on like AE map for fun in front of Twitter or whatever for Friday.
Nice.
That's what I was having Ruhif help me with. He was like, "You can just right click and export that." I was like, "No shit."
Well, hey, should we go ahead and wrap it up here then?
Oh yeah.
Yep, I think so.
Cool. Well, thanks for tuning in, everybody. Shane, again, thanks for all the information, and everyone.